In this video, we're going to look at an area of the software called the component tree. You can see this on the left of the screen here, and you can find this on the Modeling tab within VCarve and Aspire. This is a very important area of the software if you plan to work with 3D objects, because it allows you to control and organize them and dictates exactly what you'll see in the 3D view, which in turn will dictate what you machine when you come to calculate 3D roughing and finishing toolpaths. The component tree in VCarve and Aspire is almost exactly the same. So for the purposes of this tutorial, we are going to work in the VCarve software. However, towards the end, I will show you a couple of the options that are unique to Aspire so that you can make sure you've got all the information related to the component tree in both versions of the program. Let's begin by starting a new copy of VCarve to work in. I'm just going to click on the icon to create a new file, and we'll just set up a simple 12 by 12 job 3/4 of an inch thick datum in the lower left. I've got the modelling resolution set to high. That will dictate the quality of the part that we create. That's an interesting setting that it is worth visiting the Vectric support site and the FAQ section if you want a lot of detailed information on exactly how that affects your part. Here, I'm not too worried about this because I don't plan to cut it, so I'm just going to hit OK with those settings. Now, as I said, in both VCarve and Aspire, you'll find the component tree on the Modeling tab. So if we come down and click on the Modeling tab here, we can see it labelled over on the left-hand side, and it will appear below the 3D model and editing tool icons, which will be at the top of that tab. When we create a new part, by default, the software will just have a single level in the component tree. This is not a 3D object, but as you'll see as we work through, this is just a way to help us organize our components. It works a little bit like the layers do in the 2D environment. If we go up to the view drop down and choose the option to tile the windows vertical, we see the 2D view on the left, 3D view on the right, and also you can see as you would expect, there's nothing in the 3D view either except the modeling plane, and that's just a visual reference to help us see where our parts are in space. To populate our component tree, we need to create some 3D objects. In VCarve, that's going to require us to import them. In Aspire, we also have the option to use the modeling tools to create components within the software from 2D vectors and images. As we're in VCarve, I'm going to come down to the Clip Art tab. Here I can see I've got the standard library of objects. I'm just going to choose plants and fruit, and I'm going to click on the apple and drag that into the 2D view here, and we'll see that appear in the 2D view as a grayscale and appear in the 3D view as a selected object. By default, I also get the transform handles on that as well, so that I could start to make edits to it. Let's come back and click on the Modeling tab, and we can see here we've got the first component that's been added to the component tree under the selected level. As I only have one level at the moment, that is by default the selected one. One of the most common things we want to do with the component tree is control the visibility of our objects in the 3D view. Ultimately, what we see in the 3D view is what we're going to machine, and we refer to that as the composite model. So any object that's switched off in the component tree will not be part of that. To control the visibility, we use the checkboxes here. Now I can either individually switch off the visibility of a component and switch it on again, or I can also switch off the level it's on as well. So you can see I've switched off that level, and that has switched off any component or components that are actually sitting on that particular level. To show that more clearly, let's come down to the Clip Art tab and just drag another apple into our job here. Let's come over and click on the Modeling tab again. Now we've got two components with the same name here, and again I can either individually switch them off there, or if I click to switch off the level, it will switch off everything that is under that particular level. So taking a look at the things we can see in the component tree, the first thing we get to is this little box with a minus sign in it next to the level name. If I click on the minus sign, it will actually minimize the contents of that level. Then I'll see a plus sign here, which I can click on to open the contents again. Now this doesn't affect the visibility of the objects in the 2D or 3D view, or whether we're going to machine them or not. That's purely dictated by these checkboxes that we were looking at before. This is just organisational so that I can make the list I'm looking at a little bit shorter if I don't need to work on some of the objects that are on a particular level. Next we have the checkboxes that we've already looked at for visibility. Then on the levels and the components we get to these little icons, and these indicate the combine mode. If I hover over any of these, it's showing me the combine mode. For the level is set to add, and that's what this icon means here. And for the components it's set to merge, and that's what the icon means here. We'll come back and look at that in more detail in a moment. Next we see the name that the level and the component have currently got, and that's very easy to change, and again we'll look at the method for doing that in a second. So that's all the things that we can see in the component tree there. The other control we have over the component tree is up here, and that's this checkbox at the top. What this allows me to do is undraw everything in the component tree, or draw everything in the component tree all at the same time. So if I had a whole bunch of levels and components, that's going to switch them off and on as a kind of master control at the top there. If I want to remove a component permanently from the component tree, I can just select it and hit the delete key on the keyboard to get rid of it. Now if you do that by accident, it's easy to undo it. You can come up to Edit and choose Undo Delete Components from the top here, or you can use the shortcut key Ctrl-Z there. You'll see that's just reappeared back in my component tree and in the original location it was before we deleted it. As you create more components, to help you stay organised, it can be beneficial to change their names. Here we've got two components with exactly the same name, which could easily get confusing later on. I can just select one of these and then click on the name again, and that will give me the option. It will highlight there to edit it. So we might call that one Apple 1 and just click to accept that, then click on this, select again there, and we'll call that Apple 2. So now I've got one called Apple 1 and one called Apple 2 there. So far we've looked at most of the ways we can control the component tree with the left mouse click. However, if we right mouse click on a level or a component, that brings up this context sensitive menu that you can see here. So we get one on a level, and if I click off and right mouse click on a component, you can see we get an even longer context sensitive menu there. If we come back and right mouse click on the level, we can take a look at some of the options available here. First we can adjust its combine mode. I'm not going to change that at the moment. We'll look at an example in a minute that has more levels where we'll be able to see what that does more clearly. Below that we have options to show and hide different combinations of the level. So you can see under show I've got show this, show only this, show all but this, and show all. And under hide we've got hide this and hide all. Now as we get more levels, the options become more apparent as to what they'll do. So for instance, if we had multiple levels and we chose show all but this, then all the other levels visibility would be switched on, but the one that you were on would be switched off. So that's worth just playing around with those when you start to get multiple levels. Next we have the option to insert a new level. So if I click on that, you can see a new level is created, and now I could add components to that, or also if we right mouse click, we've got the option to delete a level. Now that won't be available when I've only got a single level, because I always need to have at least one in the part. But now I could delete that level, and I can also right mouse click on this, and the last option is to rename the level. So I could rename that something more appropriate to help me with my organisation. The software doesn't care what you put in for a name there, that just has to be something that's going to be relevant to you, helping you stay organised. Now let's take a look at the context sensitive menu for the components. If we right mouse click on Apple II there, again we can control its combine mode within the list, and we'll look at that more in detail in a moment with our other example. Next we can control its 2D preview. That is the grayscale image that you see in the 2D view. Sometimes something may be obscured behind something else. In this case, the one we've got selected, the grayscale is behind the other. For the purposes of selection, I might want to adjust that order, so I could come in here and say move to front. Now that's made that more prominent in the 2D view and made it easier for me to select. Now it's very important to understand that that only affects the visibility of these in the 2D view. It has absolutely no bearing on what I see in the 3D view, so it doesn't change the combine mode or how the different components combine together. So the composite model will not be changed by the order of the grayscale. It's purely for visualization. If I right mouse click on that again, go 2D preview and move to back, it will just readjust that so that it's behind all the other grayscales that we've got in the 2D view. Now if we right mouse click again, we've got the option to copy a component, so that will effectively copy it to the clipboard so that we could paste it, copy back in here, or even paste it into another session of the software. We can also duplicate the component. If I click on that, then the software is going to create an exact copy of it, same name, same combine mode and everything. And so now we've got two versions of that object. I may want to move that onto another level, move its position, or adjust it accordingly. In this case, I may just want to right mouse click on that and come down and delete it. If we click on that, then it's going to disappear again. Right mouse clicking in here, you can see the option to ungroup is not set at the moment. In order to do that, we'd actually have to have a group of components, and we'll come back to that a little bit later too. So we've looked at delete. We can also rename a component from the right mouse click. You saw we could also do that by left clicking on it. So again, if we wanted to rename it, it'll highlight that and we can come in and change the name of that again. Just click in order to accept that. If we right mouse click, we've got the same options for showing and hiding components, so we can show just that component, or switch on the visibility of that component, show only that component and switch on the others, show everything except that component, or just switch all of them on, and we can also hide that or hide all as well. The last option we've got for the components under the right mouse click menu is the properties. If we click on that, then it's going to open the component properties and allow me to access things like its name, its combine mode, and things to do with its size and whether it's tilted or faded. Really all the control that I need over that object. If I close that, the other way I've got of accessing the properties form is by selecting a component and clicking on the wrench icon here in the 3D model tools. So same operation whether I click on the icon or right mouse click and go to properties there. To select a component, I can either click on the object in the list here, so under the component tree it will highlight, the grayscale will be made bold, and the object in the 3D view will turn red. I can also select from the 2D view by clicking on a grayscale, and you see that automatically changes the selection in the other areas as well. Or I can double click on an object in the 3D view, and again that'll turn the object red, bold the grayscale, and also highlight it in the component tree as well. So it doesn't matter which one of those we use, it's going to have the same effect and display the same visual indication that the object has been selected. To deselect, I'm just going to either click in the background of the component list here, or I could click in the white space of the 2D view as well. So that covers most of the controls that we have available from the component tree. Now let's open a more realistic example so we can see the effect that those controls have on our composite 3D model. Let's come up to File and close this. I don't want to save it. Then I'm going to open an existing file, and from the project folder I'm going to select Crest Example and hit the Open button. Now we can see we've got a number of components displayed in the 2D view. Let's go up and click on the icon to tile the window so we can see both the 2D and the 3D, and come down and click on the Modeling tab so we can see what a more realistic component tree might look like when we've got many objects in it. For this particular example, we've got 9 components which are distributed over 3 different levels. What we see in the 3D view directly relates to the order that these components are in, the order of the levels, and also the combine mode that's set for each of the components and each of these levels. The first thing the software does is effectively calculate what the subassembly of each level looks like. So it looks at all the components on a level and combine those together. Then it will look at each of the levels that it's got, and it will take the result for each of those and use the combine mode for the level, starting at the bottom and working up. Will effectively blend those objects together, adding, merging, subtracting, or whatever combine mode we've got set to give us the composite result, which is what we see in the 3D view. So let's take a moment to examine the contents of each of our levels. We'll start by switching off all the components and levels by unchecking the box at the top of the component tree. Now let's check the box on next to level 1, and we can see that's a very simple level because there's just a single component on it, so don't really need to worry too much about what's on there. Come back to that in a second. Let's just undraw that. Now if we switch on level 2, we can see this is made up of 5 different components, and I'm just going to come to the bottom one, right mouse click and say show only this, so that will just undraw all the other components there. Within the level, as we switch on additional components, each of those will be combined with the one below it based on the combine mode that we have set. If we switch on the crown, the combine mode for that is set to merge, so the two objects just blend together. If we spin that around and zoom in, you can see how that's happening. The green area here just shows me that some of the selected object is under another one. It's just showing me the silhouette in effect. If we click in the background to deselect, you can see the two objects are just blending together, where the highest part of each object will stick out in front of the other one. If I was to change the combine mode of that to add, then I'm going to see a different result now of the feathers being added onto the crown. So now we get this kind of odd looking shape where the feather is sort of overlaying the top of the crown. That's not what I want, but hopefully you can see there now by changing that combine mode how we're going to get a different result. I'm just going to right mouse click, change the combine mode back to merge. Now if we switch on the fleur-de-lis and the other fleur-de-lis, we can see each of those is set to merge, and the result that we get is what we can see in the 3D view now. So that is the sum total of everything that's on that level, and that's what will be combined with the other objects in the part based on the combine mode of the level itself. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's just undraw that level. Take a look at the top level here, so we'll switch on level 3. Let's just zoom out a bit, and let's right mouse click on the banner, show only this. So now we can see we've got a banner. Let's just click to deselect, switch on this flourish which is set to merge in with the banner, and switch on the other flourish which is also set to merge in with the banner there. So now you can see the sum total of what's on that level as well. Let's just switch off all the levels again, and now starting at the bottom, let's switch on each level one by one. So level 1, as we saw before, very simple, is just the shield. Now level 2, if we hover over that, the combine mode is set to add. So although all the objects on it are merging together, the result of those objects when we switch on this level is being added to any level below that. So now we've got the shield, and then on top of that we've got all the components that have merged together that make up level 2 being added to that shield. Level 3 at the top, if we hover over it, has a combined mode of merge. So the result of that, all these objects being merged together when we switch this on, will now be merged with the shield and all the other parts that were in level 2 as well. So each time it's just a cumulative result of everything that was below it, and then the combined mode of the next level we get to based on whatever objects are on it and what that combined mode is set to. Now, as well as the combined modes, the order will affect things as well. As we said, it starts at the bottom and works up. If I was to select level 1 and drag that up and position it above level 3, we're going to get a different result in the 3D view now. And the reason for that is, if we just undraw everything, is we've got level 2 first, so all the objects merged together. That's being merged with level 3, but now level 1 is being added to those. So by changing the order, we've got a totally different result. So the order is very important along with the combine mode. If I want to move that level back, we can just click on it and drag back down here, and I'll just position it just below where it says level 2 there, and that'll put it back at the bottom again. And now we have the correct result in the 3D view. In the same way, by changing the combine mode of a level, we can see a different result as well. If I was to take the subassembly of level 2, right mouse click and change the combine mode to subtract instead of add, now if we look in the 3D view, we can see the contents of that level is being taken away from the shield. So we have the shield, take away the contents of this level, and then we're still merging together the objects that are on the last level there. So again, very, very important to work with these and get the right combine modes and the right order, ultimately so that what you see in the 3D view is exactly what you want to cut. This composite model is the part that's going to be machined when we create 3D roughing and 3D finishing toolpaths. Now there's one other type of entity that you'll see in the component tree that we haven't yet looked at, and that is a group of components. If we want to interact with a set of objects as if they were a single component, then we can group them together. For instance, if we come in here and select everything on level 2 here, and I was to right mouse click and choose the option to group, now that has put those all together. You can see I've got a little plus sign next to that which I can click on to open, and if we use the slider I can access that to close. I can right mouse click and rename that the same way I can with the components and with the levels. So we could just call that decoration group there, so we've got a more clear name. Now when I select that, it's in effect going to act as a single component, and where the benefits come is I can click on that in the 2D view here and we can stretch that. I could interact with that with the different modeling tools that I have available and basically work on that as if it was a single object. To ungroup it, right mouse click and ungroup, and it will just go back into its original orientation there. So that pretty much concludes everything we can do with the componentry in VCarve. I mentioned at the start of the tutorial that there is an option in Aspire that isn't available in VCarve, so I'm just going to start a copy of Aspire here so I can just demonstrate to you what that option is. Let's open the same crest example as we had before. If we come to the Modeling tab, first of all you can see the component tree sits lower down on the Modeling tab because there are a lot more tools available in Aspire in order to create components and to edit them. The other thing that we have available to us though is the ability to take objects on a level or take individual components or groups and export them as 3D clip art. If I select a component and click export as 3D clip art, the software is going to allow me to save that as a 3D clip file. This is a file that I can import into other sessions of Aspire or keep in my clip art library. If I right mouse click on a level and say export as 3D clip art, then I have the same option there, and now what's going to happen is it's going to effectively group that together into an object, save it as a 3D clip, and if I re-imported that, then what I would do is see that as a grouped component and I'll be able to ungroup it onto a level in another session of the software. So just one additional option there with the component tree in Aspire that's important to know about. And that concludes our look at the component tree and the different choices that we have within there. This is a very important part of the software if you're planning to work with 3D models, and you will see it used extensively throughout the other tutorials. Thanks for watching this video.